It's Bill King here, and this is Conversations in All Keys from the Classic Redwood Theatre. And my guest today is an author. I can prove that right here. He's a songwriter, he's a band leader, and the band's called Whiskey Jack. Welcome in, Duncan Fremlin.
Thank you, Bill.
It's great to have you here.
Well, great to be here.
45 years?
Yeah, just 46 now.
You look so good for 45.
I thought so.
From running a band 45 years, what does it take? Is it vitamins, or what is it that to keep something intact?
It's a dictatorship.
Is it how?
Does that help?
Are you the one in control, or what?
I'm in control.
Okay.
Yeah.
You go back to the beginning, and this has been like just some of the greatest personalities in country music have come through the band, been members of the band.
Yeah.
Tell us something about that.
So it's starting out with just four. Now we're four again, four acoustic players, and a co-partner with a fellow from Peterborough, John Hoffman. He and I started it, ran it. The two of us ran it. He moved to Peterborough. I took it over in '87, and I've been running it pretty much as a dictatorship ever since. And it's a question of redefining if there's a need. I think I have somewhat of an idea as to how I want it to be at any particular time. I saw an opportunity, for example, a few years ago to bring in Howard Willett on a harmonica. And boy, what an addition that was. And then Steve Claude on accordion. The late Steve Claude came in and played with us. And we always had a regular thing going somewhere. Ben Wick's a place out in the West End called L'Arte. There was always something to look forward to. So if there's one thing that I've been able to maintain throughout the years is my ability to get gigs.
The sound, how has that evolved? Was it based on a certain period of, let's say, bluegrass? Or
yeah, initially, it's 1977. There were bluegrass clubs in Canada. There were bluegrass festivals.
Okay.
There was a lot of work. And literally, I quit my job on a Friday, and we started six-nighters on the Monday. And we did six-nighters for a couple of years until we got enough profile, had enough money to make an album, and then in 78, 79, we started getting festivals, and then Tommy Hunter called. Les Pulio, if you remember Les Pulio, producer with the Tommy Hunter Show. Joan Tussoni was the director. Anyway, he called, and we auditioned, got that gig, and all of a sudden our lives changed. So there's always been something that's been able to sort of give us a boost. Whenever there was a lull, something happened, an album or never a government grant. There were never any government grants. This is all self-induced, this organization.
Now, with Tommy Hunter, you had a segment of the show.
There's a government grant. We'll call Tommy Hunter a government grant.
But what a great
What a great, it paid for a few mortgage payments, I'll tell you.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well,
what'd you buy?
I have a house in Cabbagetown.
And that's because of Tommy Hunter Show?
Well, pretty much, pretty much.
But there was a segment, you had a spotlight in the show?
Yeah, they created a comedy segment called The Old Back Porch, and they'd bring out Billy Meeks or Grandpa Jones, or some comedian would come out, and we'd play a song, we'd knock on the door, out from our old back porch would walk Grandpa Jones, and he'd tell a few jokes, and then so it'd last 2.5, 3 minutes. We did that for 3 years. And then Nashville Network came along. They bought all our shows. So we were on TV, high-profile TV, for 6 years, including in the United States. So it enabled us to cross the border and play Ralph Emery's show and David Holt's show.
Show, didn't he?
Yeah, well, it was the only show.
He called the shots.
He was a powerful guy during the day, yes.
And this is where the connection came with Charles Stompin' Tom.
Well, Tom told me years later, I met him in 1990, but he told me years later that when he was off the road, which he was off the road for 13 years, on Friday night he'd go up to the living room and tune in the Tommy Hunter Show. That's where he became fans with Whiskey Jack. So after I met him in 1990, he was looking for banjo players. I got the call for a couple of albums between 90 and 93, and then one day we're just talking around, I go out and I play chess with him and stuff on a Sunday afternoon. And he said, "Do you want to stay for dinner? Lena and I are going into town for some Chinese food." I said, "Sure." So on the way into town, over dinner, he said, "Would Whiskey Jack record an album with me and go on the road?" He said, "I've got this album that I've written, and I think your sound would really compliment
this. This is his first album, right?
This is the first album with us, but
with
no,
us.
no,
Okay.
yeah.
Go.
This was in '93. The album was called Dr. Stomp and Tom A. But I had already recorded with Tom a couple of albums before then, during the Meech Lake,
oh my God, a
during
chord.
those. Yeah, well, he was writing stuff like Maple. I can't remember. Believe in your country. If you don't believe the country should come before yourself, you better serve your country by living somewhere else. Kind of a draconian way to look at it, but he was a black and white character. Yeah. So I played on that album, and his profile was going up at that point. And then in 1983, he recorded the album with us and cross-country tour. And next thing you know, we're kind of regulars we go to the house fairly often. He'd call me and say, "You want to bring the band up? We're having a party. We're having a whatever." And so we became kind of...
What kind of chess player was he?
There was only one guy I ever met who beat him. He was our drummer in '93. Beat him early in the tour, and he had to stay all night until Tom beat him.
He's a competitive guy, huh?
Unbelievably competitive.
All the time on the tour, were there things that came up that he just felt the situation, he had to own the situation?
Oh yeah, he was the boss. Yeah, yeah. He had meetings just to. They really had no point, many of these meetings, other than just to demonstrate that he was in charge. I'm sure of that. Yeah.
It sounds like Ronnie Hawkins having those all-night rehearsals and never showing up.
You know what?
Just call them.
They probably had a lot in common, those two.
That was the style.
In those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To show the players that we're in control.
Yeah.
And you're just the side players.
Yeah, but in my case, I wasn't the main player in Whiskey. Never have been.
Okay.
I've been the silent. I always surround myself with players that are way better than I am, and so I didn't have that same. There was never an ego for me. It was just survival. I was just trying to keep this thing going because I thought, if I don't get gigs, then we're all going to lose interest, and it'll be the end of it. So I just kept getting gigs.
And even now, you're still fighting for an audience. And it gets tougher, doesn't it?
It's tougher, and I think about it every day. I wake up thinking about it. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. I'm sitting here talking to you, thinking this is going to increase my audience. Right. I only have one job in the world, and that is to get an audience. That's it. The music, it's important, no question. How we sing, how we perform, that's all important. But without there being somebody sitting in those seats paying the $1 to see us play,
But we were just discussing the fact that a lot of artists now do not make that effort. They want somebody to book them, and then the booking is what it is, and then you're playing for an empty house. And it's not like it used to be, because you could depend on the marquee, you could depend on an ad in the newspaper or word of mouth and such. It's with so much social media, we were discussing the fact there's 800-something thousand tracks released a week, and only about 100 of them get curated or find a place to be even listened to, that you still have to focus on the audience that you have that still loves bluegrass, that loves this style of country or this kind of music.
Well, the common thing that everybody wants, forget all the music, they just want to be entertained.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is.
So what do you do to entertain that's different from others?
Well, after doing this for 45 years, and Douglas John Cameron's my musical partner, the two of us we're quite a team, and I mean, we'll do anything. If we're shameless, we'll sing whatever we have to sing, we'll perform, we'll do whatever we have to do to entertain them, and it doesn't matter what the audience. I'm sure that you give us any audience, I don't care what their musical persuasion is, we'll entertain them somehow. We'll figure it out. But that just comes from being on stage for half a century. That didn't just happen. There's two kinds of musicians, I think. There are those who achieved great success. I'm really generalizing here, but those who achieved great success early on. Mm-hmm. And a lot of money was invested in them, record companies, promotional companies, they get sponsorships. A lot of money was thrown at them. Maybe they had a couple of hits, maybe a couple of pseudo hits, I don't know. But they did a lot of work at the very beginning, but once they hit, then their work stopped. In our case, every day, nobody's going to do this for us if we don't do it ourselves. And the difference between those two categories is night and day. I can't relate to those other folks. I play with them and I meet them and I know them and everything, but they're in a different world. And their attitude toward the business, I think we enjoy the business more in a way. We certainly appreciate it more.
Yeah, you know something, I look at the stories, and I read stories, and I love biographies, and I love all,
me too,
about music people.
Yeah.
I love those, and there's something about, that being 15, 16, 17 years old, and having a tremendous drive that you will go out and you will learn this, you will learn that, you will learn all these aspects, but it's that confidence, self-assuredness that when you reach out to people, if you have the goods, like they say, if you have the throat, you have the personality, and you have the drive, that you're able to sell yourself and convince others that are in a position to do much for you, to step in and take over part of that in your career. But you still have to contribute. You still have to show up.
Well, like you said a few minutes ago, somebody will get a gig, and it's got a guarantee, so their work stops.
No, it doesn't work like that.
No, it does not work like. In fact, the present show that we're in, or the gigs that Douglas and I get now, we get called back because we have a YouTube channel that has almost 2,000 subscribers. We're always giving them content. We're always giving them ideas. We did a series of shows in Orangeville, early September 2023. And we produced a series of reels, short little clips. And I did one. There's a brewery up in northern Ontario, Whiskey Jack Brewery. So somebody brought back a can of Whiskey Jack beer for me. So I just stood in front of a camera and said, improvised something, held up a can and saying, when you think of beer, when you think of Whiskey Jack. And so I use that to promote.
You have to do that, don't you?
Yeah, and the theater director was so grateful that we were doing this, and we ended up selling 2 out of 3 shows in Orangeville, for crying out loud.
That's great stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, at this point, we're about to wrap up on this, but Keith Holding, who's the videographer here, was the first to tell me about the Redwood Theatre. Yeah. And he was on to me about it for a year. Yeah. And then you
me
pulled,
too.
Yeah. But
it's his fault.
Yeah. Well, you pulled me in then last December for a fundraiser for, I guess for food.
For food banks, yeah.
Food banks, right? Yeah. And it was my first time coming here. And then I fell in love with the place.
Yeah. They fell in love with you.
Well, we all fell in love with this.
There's a lot of love around here, isn't there?
A lot of love around. But we're here at the Classic Redwood Theatre doing this interview, and it feels just right.
It does.
Duncan Fremlin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.